There's an old saying that goes, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." If Putin were capable of feeling shame, it would be coursing through his body right now. Russia has just been humiliated at an airfield in the Kursk region. There, Russia was hiding one of its fighter jets behind one of the country's best air defense systems. Ukraine destroyed them both. First one, then the other. An unstoppable weapon has been burned to the ground, and Russia has been fooled twice in a matter of drone strikes. This is embarrassing, humiliating. But then that's become a regular occurrence for Russia these days. We head to the Kalino Airfield, which is located about 7 kilometers east of the center of Kursk. That oblast might ring a bell. It was the location of Russia's greatest humiliation in the Ukraine war to date, when Ukraine launched a counter-invasion in August 2024 that resulted in it taking several hundred square kilometers of Russian territory. Though that invasion was eventually repelled, it marked Kursk, which is a border region, as one of the most vulnerable oblasts in all of Russia. And now the sight of Putin's greatest source of shame has once again been rubbed in his face. Since launching its invasion, Russia has turned Kalino into a dual-use airfield. The Kursk-Vostochny airport is located there, but hidden away in Kalino in a military airbase that supports Russian aviation activities. Protected by some of the most advanced air defenses that Russia has, this airbase is home to fighter jets and bombers that have been launching missiles and glide bombs at Ukraine for much of the war. Ukraine needed to do something about the base, and on July 21st, the news broke that it had done just that. The basics are brutal. Ukraine's 15th Separate Artillery Reconnaissance Brigade, which is also known as Black Forest, conducted a lethal drone attack that destroyed two of Russia's most valuable weapons. A MiG-29 fighter jet went down in the blasts, which is embarrassing enough for Russia, but even worse than that, Ukraine's drones also took out a Pantsir S-1 air defense system that was in place to protect the jet. In one fell swoop, Ukraine destroyed two high-value targets, as Russia lost a combat aircraft and a short-range air defense system that is supposed to protect the Kalino airfield against the very threat that Ukraine just sent. Think about that for a moment. The entire point of an air defense system is to destroy incoming projectiles, be they missiles or drones. Russia installed its Pantsir S-1 at Kalino thinking that it would do just that. It didn't. The very weapon that was supposed to stop Ukraine's drones was destroyed by those drones, and that opened the door for a follow-up attack that took out the MiG-29. As we said, humiliating. The attack was announced by Ukraine's general staff in a Telegram post, with the threat of more to come. Along with that post came a video showcasing the strikes in such detail that Russia won't be able to refute that they happened or fall back on its usual drone debris excuse for why Ukraine's drones were able to reach yet another Russian base to take its valuable targets. The footage, which lasts about 50 seconds, begins with snippets of the reconnaissance work and planning that went into the strike. We see the base being identified, along with the MiG-29 and Pantsir S-1 that Ukraine would go on to target. We see the MiG-29 in flames, which is as clear an indicator of a successful strike as anybody could want. But the highlight comes during the last few seconds. Footage shot from the perspective of Ukraine's drone shows the Pantsir S-1 lined up in its sights. This is one of Russia's best air defense systems. You might think that system would be wheeling around, rattling off rounds of missiles at the drone. But no, the drone approaches, with the air defense system seemingly oblivious. The footage cuts off just before the drone makes contact. But the message is clear. Not only did Russia's Pantsir S-1 fail to protect the MiG-29, but it was so useless that it didn't even seem capable of responding to Ukraine's drone. Was this a legitimate system? A decoy? Does it matter? The headline is that Ukraine just struck an airbase in Kursk that is supposed to be very well guarded, and Russia failed to do a thing about it. The pain piles on even more when we start digging into the numbers. It's not just that Russia has lost two important weapons. That's embarrassing enough. It's also that when we said that these weapons were high value, we meant it. A single MiG-29 fighter jet, back when these Soviet-era airframes were still being built, set Russia back about $25 million. A Pantsir S-1 costs about $20 million. So Russia has just been forced to absorb a total of $45 million in losses thanks to a devastating 1-2 punch delivered by Ukrainian drones. And don't forget that the drones that did the damage would have cost a fraction of this amount. Ukraine hasn't confirmed which drones it used for its Kursk strike. However, we can assume the cost would have been in the low six figures at most for this strike, which is an immense return on investment. And all of this doesn't account for the broader operational impact of losing these assets. Kalino is more vulnerable than before due to losing its Pantsir S-1, which means future Ukrainian drones are more likely to reach their targets. Plus, the loss of a MiG-29 means one less platform that Russia can use to launch missiles and glide bombs. That leads to less damage done to Ukraine, and when Ukraine isn't under aerial pressure, it can focus more on inflicting losses against Russia on the ground. So July 21st wasn't exactly a great day for Russia, but by now, you know how Ukrainian strikes go. Rarely does Ukraine focus on a single location, and that was the case here. As equipment at Kalino burned, Ukraine's drones struck hard elsewhere in Russia and the occupied territories. Euromaidan Press offers the full rundown. In Horly, which is located in the occupied region of Kherson, Ukraine destroyed a Busol S radar station. This station wasn't used to help Russian air defenses. Instead, the Russian military uses it to monitor maritime targets, likely in the Black Sea and on the Dnipro River. It's a coastal surveillance system, and now that it's gone, Russia won't be able to detect Ukrainian maritime drones as they make their way to positions in the occupied territories in Crimea. In Luhansk Oblast, Ukraine took out an ammunition depot close to Kundryucha and a logistics depot close to Davidivka in Donetsk. Zaporizhia was also a target as Ukraine's drones destroyed a pair of control posts, once in Kamyanska and the other in Komar. And it's not like Kursk only had its airfield to worry about either. Ukraine's drones also hit a logistics warehouse close to Popovo-Lazachi in the Kursk Oblast. Overall, it was a night of aerial terror and air defense failure for Russia. The MiG-29 and the Pantsir S-1 were the showstoppers, but they weren't the whole show. Ukraine seems to be making the targeting of Russian airfields a habit. Only a few days before announcing the Kalino strike, Ukraine revealed that a precision drone operation against the Saki airfield in occupied Crimea had also been pulled off. This strike, which is a repeat target for Ukraine, involved the use of upgraded versions of the Hornet drone that Ukraine has been using in its logistics lockdown campaign, which is designed to isolate Crimea. An Su-24M went up in flames, leaving Russia to deal with the loss of 2 of its fighters in the space of a week. Was this new version of the Hornet used in Kursk, or did Ukraine employ a different drone? Ukraine isn't saying. It doesn't need to. The burning MiG-29 and destroyed Pantsir S-1 say all that Ukraine needs to say. But now we're ready to go deeper. Why does taking out these high-value targets matter, and what does Ukraine's strike mean for Russia in the wider context of the war? We'll answer those questions in a moment. First, you're watching The Military Show. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to hit the button and enable notifications so you don't miss what we have coming next. Let's come back to the 2 systems that Ukraine destroyed in Kalino. You already know that the MiG-29 and Pantsir S-1 are high-value targets monetarily. Another multi-million-dollar hole has just been punched into the Russian war chest via these strikes. But the true value in these weapons lies in their capabilities. Now, we're not going to tell you that the MiG-29 is some world-dominating fighter jet that is among the best that any country can field, not by a long shot. A fighter jet that dates back to the Soviet era, the MiG-29 was designed to be an air superiority fighter during the 1970s, and was intended to be a counter to the then-new F-15, according to Odin. There are around 20 variants of the jet, and it's unclear which Ukraine struck at Kalino. However, the key stats are that this fighter jet has a combat range of 1,500 kilometers when loaded with external fuel, can reach a top speed of 2,400 kilometers per hour, and can be loaded with a range of missiles and bombs. Only most of that doesn't really matter when it comes to how Russia is using MiG-29s against Ukraine. Despite having a massive numbers advantage when it comes to fighter jets, Russia uses most of its fighters to launch missiles and glide bombs at Ukraine from behind the front lines, and, as we see in Kursk, ideally outside of Ukrainian territory. There's a good reason for that. Russia tried to send fighter jets into Ukraine early in the invasion, only to see dozens of those jets get shot down as they tried to conduct bombing runs against Ukrainian targets. So far, Russia has lost 438 aircraft against Ukraine, a large percentage of which were lost during the initial attempts to assert traditional air superiority. MiG-29s, along with plenty of other Russian fighters, were among these initial losses, and Russia had to quickly adapt how it uses its fighter jets for them to have any impact. So Russia came up with the bombing from behind the front strategy. That has the benefit of keeping Russia's fighter jets out of the range of Ukrainian air defenses, albeit with the downside being that those jets have to stay at airfields close enough to Ukraine that they can unleash their missiles and glide bombs. Still, Russia is willing to make that trade-off, especially given the effectiveness of glide bombs up to this point, and the belief in some circles that glide bomb attacks are going to define the next phase of the war. That's what Forbes says is going to happen, at least. In a July 1st piece, Vikram Mittal wrote that glide bombs are gradually replacing traditional artillery as the main means of applying pressure against fortifications. This is the case for both sides. For Russia, constant glide bomb launches allow it to bombard Ukrainian settlements from afar using old FAB bombs that have been converted using wing kits, providing them with greater range and more precision. What does this have to do with the MiG-29 that Ukraine just destroyed? That fighter jet was based in Kursk, which is a border region. It's practically a certainty that Russia was using its now ruined fighter jet as part of its aerial bombardment strategy, perhaps focusing on Sumy and other nearby regions. By taking it out, Ukraine has delivered a shot against an aerial strategy on which Russia has become increasingly reliant. Plus, Ukraine sent the message that no fighter jets sent to Kalino will be safe, which could force Russia to withdraw other airframes. Again, that will limit the impact of the missile and glide bomb campaign. Then there's the Pantsir S-1. We call this air defense system one of the most important that Russia has in its arsenal because, in theory, it should be among the most effective against Ukraine's drones. Portable enough to be loaded onto the back of a truck, which allows it to be easily moved into position, the Pantsir S-1's main strength is supposed to be its versatility. The system combines missiles with a pair of automatic 2A38M 30mm anti-aircraft guns to give it an extremely high kill probability. Army technology says this probability lies somewhere between 70 and 95%. Though whether that's based on verifiable performance or Russian claims isn't clear. When a Pantsir S-1 is fully loaded, it packs about 1,500 rounds of ammunition for its guns, which can vary between armor-piercing, fragmentation, and high-explosive rounds. The guns can rattle off 700 rounds per minute and have a range of 4 kilometers. The system also comes loaded with 12 5.7E6 air defense missiles. The point we're making here isn't about firepower. It's about versatility. The Pantsir S-1 should be able to handle anything that Ukraine throws at it, from missiles to drones, due to having such a wide variety of ammunition that its users can mix and match to suit the situation. And yet the Pantsir S-1 at Kalino failed. We know that Ukraine has come up with a strategy for destroying Pantsirs. Ukraine has regularly deployed entire swarms of drones to deal with these systems. The idea here is simple. Create so many targets that the Pantsir doesn't know where to fire, or if it does, can't fire enough to stop everything before one of the drones strikes. But that doesn't seem to be what happened at Kalino. The possibilities there are that the Pantsir S-1 installed at the base didn't have a radar or had a malfunctioning radar that failed to track Ukraine's drone. Alternatively, and far more worrying for Russia, the Pantsir S-1 may simply not be all that it's cracked up to be when it comes to defending against drone assaults. There are hints that the latter is indeed the case. In February, Pravda reported that Ukrainian strikes in 2025 halved the number of Pantsir surface-to-air artillery and missile systems that Russia has available. That's 50% of the stockpiles gone in a single year, which indicates that the Pantsir S-1 isn't as capable as Russia would like the world to believe. That destruction of Pantsir systems had a strategic goal, as Ukraine's SSU pointed out when it said, "That is why the systematic destruction of Pantsir systems has a strategic goal, to break through the enemy's air defense and create corridors to strike targets deep in its rear. This enables Ukraine's defense forces to operate effectively against military bases, warehouses, airfields, and other occupier facilities." But the real news here is 50% of systems destroyed. That tells us everything we need to know about the Pantsir S-1. Despite being one of Russia's most advanced close-range air defense systems, it simply isn't good enough to stop Ukraine's ever-evolving drones. Kalino just proved that firsthand. And Russia has been dealt a humiliating blow where yet another expensive air defense system has been destroyed by a drone that cost a fraction of the amount to build. Russia's Pantsir losses are now so extensive that it's been forced into using hybrid systems that combine different types of ground launchers for missiles. That's a sign that not only is Russia losing Pantsir S-1s, but it also isn't able to replace them. Ukraine just keeps wearing it down. And every Pantsir that goes down leads to more vulnerability. So where does all of this leave Russia? In the grand scheme of the war, the destruction of a MiG-29 and Pantsir S-1 at a Russian airbase is embarrassing but hardly war-ending. What's more troubling for Putin is that this strike showcases how Russian air defenses simply aren't good enough. That extends far beyond the Pantsir and to every single system that Russia has in its arsenal. Thomas Withington, who is a Fellow of Military Sciences at the Royal United Services Institute, lays the problem out. Russia's air defenses are simply not fit for purpose, that's very clear. They are not equipped to detect, track, and engage this kind of attack, and barring some massive redesign of the Russian air defense system, that will remain the case, Withington declares. In other words, drones are a problem that these defenses can't handle, and that problem isn't going away. And if you need any evidence of that, we offer a number: 174. That's how many Russian air defense systems were destroyed during the first 5 months of 2026, costing Russia $5.4 billion, United 24 Media reported on June 5th. On top of this air defense problem, Russia has lost a MiG-29 that can't be replaced. It's not that Russia can't build fighter jets, it's that the MiG-29 is long out of production. If Russia sends a new jet to Kalino, it could be a more expensive model that is far too valuable to lose, or another MiG-29 from its existing and aging stockpiles. Neither is ideal for Russia. It doesn't want to risk more modern fighter jets for the relatively simple task of launching missiles and glide bombs. But each Soviet-era airframe that goes down eats into the stockpile of jets Russia has for this task. Compounding all of this is another problem. Ukraine's drones are only getting better when it seems that all of Russia's defenses are stuck in an era before drone warfare dominated. On July 17th, United 24 media reported that Ukraine's drones, from frontline FPVs to deep strike UAVs, have passed the 1 million strikes milestone for 2026. At this rate, it seems likely that Ukraine will hit 2 million drone strikes by the end of the year, especially as these weapons now account for 90% of all the strikes that Ukraine pulls off. The approach that worked in Kalino seems to work everywhere, and it makes sense for Ukraine to lean more into this strategy as we move deeper into the year. On the tech side, the Wall Street Journal reveals that Ukrainian soldiers are now receiving satellite intelligence in real time, allowing them to locate targets and arrange strikes much faster than ever before. Maybe that's what we saw at Kalino. Maybe satellite intelligence showed Ukraine that a MiG-29 was exposed, and it immediately sent the drones to take it out. Opportunities come knocking faster than ever before, and Ukraine keeps showing that it can react with deadly force. One thing is certain. Russia has been humiliated once more as it tried to hide a fighter jet behind one of its best air defense systems, only to see both taken out. And the embarrassment keeps on coming. At least these targets were destroyed by drones. That Russia can understand, even if it isn't happy about. But elsewhere, Ukraine is using fence posts to reshape the front line. Confused? Find out what we mean by watching our video. And if you enjoyed this one, remember to subscribe to The Military Show, as we cover every Ukrainian strike against Russia that matters. And thank you for watching.